The family structure and traditional Japanese lifestyle was similar to most areas around the world. Men would work and earn the money for the household, and the women would stay at home, take care of the house and the children, though this only stood for wealthy families. For families of less fortune, men and women would work together to earn money for the household and take care of the children together. Modern Japanese roles are similar, although women now have equal rights, and more women are joining the workforce. Two types of living styles are urban and self-employed. For urban families, the husband is still making the money and the wife is a housewife. Men do not get personal time with the children, except for on Sundays. For self-employed families, the husband and wife work together, earn the money, and take care of the household together, although gender roles are still very clear. In these cases, husbands still tend to have a closer relationship with the children. The expected roles for women are good wives and wise mothers. Mothers are much more involved with the children's lives compared to the husband's relationship with the children. And now women are also joining the workforce. 66% of women in Japan are employed as of the year of 2014. Many women quit their job to have their first child, more so because it is pressured upon them to quit or be demoted. This is so common, the phrase maternity harassment was introduced. In 1999, it was banned for women to be discriminated for such things. Traditional family structure was the extended lifestyle, where even distant family would live with the household or at least close by. The firstborn son stays and lives with his parents even after marriage, though today this lifestyle has dropped. Now family structures look similar to American lifestyles: husband, wife, kids, and maybe a grandparent. The education system in Japan is required by law only for the first 9 years of elementary and middle school, though 98% of the students go on to high school. Even though beyond the 9th grade is optional, Japan is still one of the top-ranked educated populations in the world. In general, students will attend school for 6 to 7 hours, but usually stay afterwards for studying and school activities. Until recent years, school was also mandatory on Saturdays, but now has been reduced to Monday through Friday classes.
Family life back in the day in China is pretty much what you could expect. Men were the ones with high-paying jobs, if really jobs at all. They were the ones expected to make tough decisions, overlook everything as the heads of the family, and were considered the yang, hard-working, dominant, and assertive. Meanwhile, women were mainly just housewives and caretakers, and were considered the yin, weak, soft, and passive. Children were expected to work hard in the fields and help their family, at least until the Han Dynasty, when school was made free for everyone. They were expected to be hardworking, patient, obedient, and respectful of their elders. And the elders themselves were expected and considered to be wise and very knowledgeable, and would usually live with the main family. Parents were expected to keep everything in order, as well as make massive sacrifices for their families and for the future of their children, especially since children, when they were older or got older, are expected to take care of their parents and grandparents, or at the very least, the oldest son is. In terms of education, not too many kids went to school since you had to pay for it until the Han Dynasty. After the Han Dynasty, schools were separated into two categories, one for boys and one for girls. Boys received the standard education for the time, while girls mainly just learned how to be good housewives and caretakers. Both boys and girls were expected to go to school every single day from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. And in terms of houses, unless you were rich, you just lived in a rundown shack made of nearby materials. Even if you were rich, it was just a simple 4-room house with a courtyard, but even then it lacked basic amenities. Modern-day China have received a lot of improvements and changes, but family structure and life was generally the same. Some of the difference, however, would be that women could help support the men in their families by getting their own jobs and educations, although this was frowned on by some. Girls were able to receive regular educations like boys were, but were still expected to be housewives. The eldest son was still expected to take over the family when he got older. However, if the father did die before that happened, then the mother of the family could actually take over and act as the head. In fact, in certain parts of Asia, like Shanghai, women were more typically the ones who would be the heads of the families. and make the tough decisions. The education system became more modernized, and both boys and girls were expected to be in school for generally around the same time as they used to back in the day. However, there would be some kind of after-school studying program that most children would attend, and they wouldn't really get home until 10 or 11 at night and wouldn't end up going to bed till maybe around 2 in the morning, only to wake up at 6 a.m. and have to do everything all over again. The roles of grandparents and elders pretty much stayed the same. In terms of housing, thankfully the 4-room houses back in the day, if not more rooms at this point, were much more commonplace and were given the modern amenities. Not just that, but some houses would be more modernized and deviate from the traditional Chinese structure.
The family is the basic component of social life in Korea. In a Confucian patriarchal family, the family takes precedence over its individual members. Society became organized around 2 principles, that males are above females and that elders shall dominate the young. Growing old in Korea had advantages for both women and men because age was respected. Women were often self-assertive and highly valued as the family finance managers, decision-makers in family matters, and educators of children. Traditionally, the ideal family type in Korea was a patrilocal STEM family. That is, a married couple settles with or near the husband's family. The STEM family typically consists of 2 families in successive generation, a father and mother living in the same household with married oldest son, his wife, and their children. The eldest son generally inherited the family estates. The other sons were expected to live in separate residences after marriage. The central familial relationship was not between husband and wife, but rather between parent and child, especially between a father and son. At the same time, the relationships among family members were part of a hierarchy. Authority rested with the male head of the household, and differences in status existed among the other family members. The traditional Korean house is called a hanok, and were first built in the 14th century during the Joseon dynasty. Korean architecture considers the positioning of the house in relation to its surroundings. The ideal house is built with a mountain in the back and a river in the front. Hanok shapes differ by region. In the cold northern regions of Korea, hanoks are built in a square with a courtyard in the middle in order to retain heat. In the south, hanoks are more of an open L shape. Today, of course, many South Koreans still live in traditional homes or single-family homes, but a good chunk of the population in the highly urbanized areas live in apartment blocks or high-rises. In both Seoul and the province surrounding Seoul, 85% of Koreans live in apartments, with 60% of those being high-rise according to the Korean Statistical Information Service. In the past, as stated previously, the mother of the household was responsible for the education of her children. Now, the public education structure goes as follows. Preschool, which is optional, is offered from age 3 in South Korea, with compulsory schooling from the age of 5 or 6. After primary school, children move on to middle school and then high school. Taking a closer look into the public education system, after lower secondary school from ages 12 to 15, an entrance exam is taken to determine whether or not a student will move on to a vocational high school or an academic senior secondary school. After either, a certificate is received. Concluding an academic senior secondary school, a college scholastic aptitude test, or CSAT, is taken, and it's determined whether or not a student will move on to a junior college or a university. From a junior college, an associate's degree can be achieved in 2 years. Adding work experience on top of that, in another year you'll achieve a bachelor's degree. From there, a student can move on to a university and achieve a master's or a doctoral degree. If a student enrolls in a university, they can have a bachelor's degree in 4 to 6 years, then moving on to a master's program and a doctoral program. Since the amount of women receiving higher education has increased since the 20th century, we are seeing an increase of women in the workforce. In South Korea, as of 2017, the employment rate for women was about 52%, which is pretty average when compared to other countries like the United States, who has a 55% female employment rate in 2017.